I'm new here, and I want to share something that has happened in my life recently. I need to get it off my chest and maybe gain some perspective in the process. My name is Christopher. I'm 30 years old, a business owner, and I've been with Madison, also 30, for several years. We've been a strong couple for a long time, but this past year has really tested our relationship. It turned out my girlfriend wasn't honest with me. But let's start from the beginning. It all started about a year ago when my industry began to struggle. I've been running my business for several years, and at first, everything was stable. But after a while, I noticed a sharp decline in demand for my services and realized I had to step up my efforts to survive. I didn't want to lay off staff or give up on my future plans. I decided to push forward. That's probably when I started taking on more work than I could handle. At first, it was an extra project here and there, but when the industry didn't pick up, I had to increase my working hours more and more. I found that extra effort was needed on weekends, late evenings, early mornings. Basically, any time I could fit in extra billable hours or make new connections to keep the business afloat. After a while, I was working around 16 hours a day, almost every day of the week. I'd wake up at 5, head to work, and be there by 6. I worked until 5 in the evening, rushed home to grab a quick bite, and then often went back to work, staying until nearly 11 at night. Then I'd come home, collapse into bed, and repeat the pattern the next day. On weekends, it wasn't always 16 hours, but at least 10 to 12 hours, and I barely had any time for myself or my relationship. I knew this wasn't healthy, but I didn't see a way out of the situation. I was scared the business would collapse if I didn't keep up this pace, and I felt a huge responsibility for our future and my pride as a business owner. At first, Madison was very supportive. She understood I was in a tough spot and did what she could to help out at home. She took care of cooking and laundry and tried to encourage me when I was most stressed. I, in turn, tried to show appreciation when I had a free moment. But as time went on, I grew more tired and began isolating myself in my work. I lost the desire to do fun things with her, and I was often emotionally absent even during the rare times I was home. The thought that I needed to work, that I couldn't lose focus, was always in the back of my mind. I wasn't exactly proud of it, but I didn't see another way. After a few months, I noticed Madison also started becoming more distant, but in a different way. She sometimes tried to talk to me about feeling lonely or neglected, but I was too stressed to take it in. Instead, I got defensive and said things like, "What am I supposed to do? We need the money. We have to make it through this. I don't have a choice." I heard myself sounding cold and dismissive, but my head was full of finances, future plans, costs, and strategies. I was afraid we'd go under financially, and I couldn't process the possibility that our relationship might be headed in the same direction. It may have been naive, but I thought things would get better once the business improved. I believed she would understand, and I didn't consider that people have their limits and needs that can't be ignored indefinitely. Over time, I realized she no longer waited for me at home in the evenings when I got back at 11. Sometimes she wasn't there, and when I asked where she'd been, I got vague answers about hanging out with a friend. Once, I heard her mention that this friend had a housemate, a man around our age, but I didn't think much of it. I simply didn't have the mental capacity to analyze or be jealous. I was just tired, constantly tired and emotionally disconnected. I didn't even react when she went out and came home late. I just assumed she needed some social interaction, and I was well aware that I wasn't exactly a fun partner to be around at the time. Still, a small, nagging feeling of unease started growing in my gut, but I pushed it aside. I didn't want to entertain the possibility that she might be attracted to someone else. But things became even more obvious when I noticed her phone constantly buzzing whenever we were sitting on the couch together. She would always get up and move to another room or angle the screen away from me when she replied. I tried asking if she was expecting something important, but she'd just say it was a girlfriend or a coworker. Sometimes she said she needed to reply immediately, and I would brush it off because I was busy myself and didn't have the energy to snoop through her phone. We'd always had a fairly open dynamic where we could look at each other's phones if one of us needed to make a call or something, but at that point, we didn't have that closeness. I was simply too tired and disconnected to even question her behavior. Weeks went by, and the situation grew increasingly strained. I had a gut feeling she wasn't being honest with me. Somewhere deep in my mind, a little voice was saying she might be seeing someone else, But I tried to silence that voice because I thought no reasonable person would go that far without first having a serious conversation with their partner. I naively believed that if anything, she'd tell me outright that she couldn't handle my work situation anymore, and then maybe we'd try couples therapy or something. Meanwhile, I lay awake at night, wondering why she'd changed so much. I couldn't sleep properly, which impacted my work even more. I started feeling defeated and frustrated. Around that time, her girlfriend showed up at our door one evening while Madison was out. This friend of hers is a woman in her mid-40s whom we've both known for a few years. She's pretty straightforward, but not the type to interfere in others' conflicts unless invited. When she suddenly appeared, I was a bit surprised. She had some package to drop off, but I don't remember exactly what it was. We ended up having a polite conversation, and after a while, she said something along the lines of, "Maybe you should find something on the side too." I laughed awkwardly and asked what she meant. She gave a crooked smile and said, "What she doesn't know won't hurt her," referring to Madison. I didn't understand, thought it was a joke, and replied with something like, "Madison wouldn't exactly appreciate me getting a girlfriend on the side." The friend smiled again and said something like, "Well, sometimes you just have to think about yourself." It felt like a strange conversation, and when she left, I stood there wondering what on earth she was trying to say. Later that evening, it hit me that she might have been hinting that Madison was already doing exactly what she was suggesting I should do. But I pushed the thought aside because I didn't have any concrete evidence to go on. Afterward, I couldn't shake how odd the conversation had been, but I was so exhausted and overworked that I couldn't confront Madison. I thought I'd ask her another day if she and her friend had discussed anything specific recently, but then it just got lost in the shuffle because I constantly had to prioritize work and survival. When I finally remembered I wanted to ask her, it was close to 11 at night. She was already in bed, or she wasn't even home. I figured it wasn't the right time to bring it up, and so our lives continued in the same destructive pattern. A few weeks later, I started to become really worried. I noticed that Madison was out late every night, and often gone on weekends too. I finally worked up the courage to ask her directly, "Is there something going on between you and that guy who's staying at your friend's place?" Her eyes froze when I asked the question for the first time, and she firmly said, "No, why would you think that?" I replied that I was concerned because she was spending so much time there. I tried to keep my tone calm, but she went into a high-pitched denial, protesting so strongly that it felt over the top. Her reaction was so intense that I should have known something was wrong, but I was still in denial and didn't want to believe she could be cheating. I thought maybe my question had hurt her, that I wasn't trusting her. I almost apologized for even asking. Despite her emphatic denial, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. Her phone was never left out anymore. She always took it with her, even if she was just go to the bathroom or down to the laundry room. I know some people are protective of their phones, but this felt different. She didn't used to be like that. And I also knew I wasn't exactly blameless when it came to being present in our relationship. I worked so much. But at the same time, I felt like this wasn't just a reaction to my absence. Something else was going on, but I didn't know how to dig into it. I didn't have the time or energy to play detective either. My work situation remained chaotically demanding, and I had to keep working to keep the business afloat. Then came the night that changed everything. She needed my help with her phone. She said she had accidentally deleted a photo of her parents that she really cared about. I remembered her mentioning this photo before, that it was important to her. She asked me to see if I could recover it since I'm a bit tech-savvy and usually handle computer-related problems both at home and at work. I found a program that could recover deleted files and asked her to hand me the phone. She was hesitant at first, but she had asked for my help, so she eventually gave me the phone. I connected it to my computer and started the program. When you run this kind of program, you can recover not just photos, but also messages that have recently been deleted. And that's exactly what happened. I immediately saw in the recovery log that there were loads of text conversations that had been erased. At first, I thought it might just be spam or old messages she cleaned out, but when I opened the files, I realized they were conversations between her and a man. I recognized the name. It was the same guy who'd been staying at her friend's place. My hands started shaking as I realized what I was reading. Intimate messages, declarations of love, and plans for their next meetings. I felt dizzy. This wasn't just some innocent friendship. These were outright proofs of an ongoing affair. Words like, I miss you, I can't wait to see you, thank you for yesterday, it was wonderful, and so on. Even pictures they'd sent each other were included in the files, pictures I wish I'd never seen. Everything was very explicit, which made it even worse for me. I realized they had been sleeping together repeatedly, meeting almost daily, and that she was in love with him. I sat there late into the night, reading all of this with my heart pounding in my chest and tears burning behind my eyes. I don't know how long I sat there reading through the messages, but eventually I felt so sick that I had to get up and leave the room. I walked around the apartment a couple of times, gasping for air. I was utterly shocked and heartbroken, but also angry and confused. Why hadn't she just ended things with me if she was so in love with him? How could she have the audacity to do this behind my back for months? And how could she lie to my face when I directly asked her about their relationship? A flood of questions came rushing in, and I had no strength left to process them rationally. I also saw that her friend had written to Madison, saying she didn't want this going on under her roof. So they had decided to take it elsewhere. Apparently, during my last work trip, she had introduced him to her friends as her next boyfriend. I didn't even want to see her when she came home. Instead, I quickly packed up my most essential belongings into a bag. I grabbed my phone, laptop, some clothes, and drove off to a hotel in the middle of the night. I remember driving aimlessly for a while before finding a hotel with available rooms. When I got there, it was well past midnight. I checked in, went up to the room, and just collapsed onto the bed. Everything was spinning in my head. I couldn't sleep, couldn't calm down, couldn't comprehend how all of this had happened. I remember crying. At first, it was mostly sadness, but then waves of anger and disappointment came over me. I tried to keep my phone silent, so she wouldn't realize I wasn't home and try to contact me. I just wanted to be left alone. The next morning, my alarm went off at 5 as usual. I still had a job to do. I was completely drained, but forced myself to get out of bed. I saw several missed calls from Madison and texts asking where I was. I didn't have the energy to reply. I took a quick shower, put on clean clothes, and went to the office. At reception, I asked them not to let Madison into our office floor if she showed up. They nodded understandingly, and I headed to work. At the office, I was a wreck, but I tried to keep up appearances. My secretary, who knows me pretty well, immediately noticed something was wrong. She saw the blank look on my face and heard the difference in my voice. She asked if everything was okay, and I couldn't lie to her at that moment. I said something like, I found out Madison's been cheating on me last night. My secretary didn't look particularly surprised. Oddly enough, she just said, when did you find out? I replied that it had been about 6 hours ago. She nodded and said, good, now you know. It was as if she had suspected it all along. I didn't dare to ask more at that moment, but it was another shock. Had others noticed while I'd been walking around in ignorance? Throughout the day, Madison bombarded me with texts and calls. She wrote that she needed to talk to me, that I should let her explain. I refused to respond. I felt there was nothing she could say to make the situation better. The evidence was crystal clear, and her earlier over-the-top denial spoke volumes. I sent her only one short message in response, attaching a screenshot from her and his conversation. I wrote something like, tell him I said hi. You're single as of now, and he can move in permanently since all your friends already know you're together. I was so angry and disappointed that I couldn't even try to be diplomatic or civil. I just wanted her to understand that I knew everything and that she had nothing left to gain from me. After that, I turned off my phone for a while to focus on work. Even so, I felt completely unfocused and nauseated. All my thoughts revolved around how she could do this, why she wasn't just honest, and what kind of person this guy was who would agree to be the lover of a woman still in a relationship. Why didn't he demand she end things with me first? Everything felt so twisted. And the worst part was that our mutual friends apparently knew about this, at least some of them. She had even brought him to a party as her new boyfriend while I sat at work, completely unaware. Just the thought made me feel sick. I felt so humiliated. I quickly decided I didn't want to stay in our shared apartment. I realized every item, every piece of furniture in there reminded me of her. I called a real estate agent that same day and asked for help finding a new apartment. Luckily, I had been working so hard and had some savings to fall back on. I was able to secure a new place on relatively short notice. Over the following days, I went around looking at different options while continuing to stay at the hotel. It was far from a comfortable time, but I was determined to start fresh. I didn't even want to keep my old bed, my old couch, or even the kitchen utensils we had bought together. I felt like I needed a clean slate to move forward. Maybe it was drastic, but I didn't want to see anything that reminded me of her or what had happened. Meanwhile, Madison kept calling and texting. I never answered. She tried showing up at my office, but I had asked the reception staff not to let her in. I didn't want to see her, didn't even want to look at her. I'm new here, and I want to share something that has happened in my life recently. I need to get it off my chest and maybe gain some perspective in the process. My name is Christopher. I'm 30 years old, a business owner, and I've been with Madison, also 30, for several years. We've been a strong couple for a long time, but this past year has really tested our relationship. It turned out my girlfriend wasn't honest with me. But let's start from the beginning. It all started about a year ago when my industry began to struggle. I've been running my business for several years, and at first, everything was stable. But after a while, I noticed a sharp decline in demand for my services and realized I had to step up my efforts to survive. I didn't want to lay off staff or give up on my future plans. I decided to push forward. That's probably when I started taking on more work than I could handle. At first, it was an extra project here and there, but when the industry didn't pick up, I had to increase my working hours more and more. I found that extra effort was needed on weekends, late evenings, early mornings. Basically, any time I could fit in extra billable hours or make new connections to keep the business afloat. After a while, I was working around 16 hours a day, almost every day of the week. I'd wake up at 5, head to work, and be there by 6. I worked until 5 in the evening, rushed home to grab a quick bite, and then often went back to work, staying until nearly 11 at night. Then I'd come home, collapse into bed, and repeat the pattern the next day. On weekends, it wasn't always 16 hours, but at least 10 to 12 hours, and I barely had any time for myself or my relationship. I knew this wasn't healthy, but I didn't see a way out of the situation. I was scared the business would collapse if I didn't keep up this pace, and I felt a huge responsibility for our future and my pride as a business owner. At first, Madison was very supportive. She understood I was in a tough spot and did what she could to help out at home. She took care of cooking and laundry and tried to encourage me when I was most stressed. I, in turn, tried to show appreciation when I had a free moment. But as time went on, I grew more tired and began isolating myself in my work. I lost the desire to do fun things with her, and I was often emotionally absent even during the rare times I was home. The thought that I needed to work, that I couldn't lose focus, was always in the back of my mind. I wasn't exactly proud of it, but I didn't see another way. After a few months, I noticed Madison also started becoming more distant, but in a different way. She sometimes tried to talk to me about feeling lonely or neglected, but I was too stressed to take it in. Instead, I got defensive and said things like, "What am I supposed to do? We need the money. We have to make it through this. I don't have a choice." I heard myself sounding cold and dismissive, but my head was full of finances, future plans, costs, and strategies. I was afraid we'd go under financially, and I couldn't process the possibility that our relationship might be headed in the same direction. It may have been naive, but I thought things would get better once the business improved. I believed she would understand, and I didn't consider that people have their limits and needs that can't be ignored indefinitely. Over time, I realized she no longer waited. Now I'm focusing on the future and building my own well-being. I've started working out a little more regularly when I have time. I spend time with a few close friends I trust. I haven't started a new relationship yet, but I don't feel ready for that. I want to make sure I'm truly whole as a person, that I'm not carrying a lot of mistrust and bitterness into something new. If I meet someone in the future, I want to be able to give my all without being paranoid or overly suspicious. But I also know I'll be more attentive to red flags. I won't be as naive as I was before. If anyone's wondering how I feel about Madison today, I'll be honest and say I don't hate her, but I also feel no desire to reconcile. I think there's a chance she regrets everything, but that's not something I want to dwell on. My trust in her is zero. I've heard she moved out of our old apartment and is living somewhere else now. We haven't had any contact. I haven't even blocked her anymore because she doesn't reach out, and I feel no need to contact her. She lost me, and I'm not going to be a doormat who takes her back. I'm ready for a new chapter and have already started that chapter on my own. That's the whole story, as concise as it can be when I'm trying to explain everything. I'm not sure if I'm looking for advice or just wanted to share. Maybe I wanted to show someone that it's better to rip off the band-aid immediately if you discover your partner is cheating. Staying in a destructive situation like I did isn't healthy for anyone. I wish I'd had the courage to confront her much earlier, or at least listen to my gut when it told me something was wrong. But here I am now, and I feel better with each passing day. I'm still sad that it turned out this way, but I'm proud that I left the situation once I knew the truth. For those of you who made it through all of this, thank you for listening. If anyone can relate and wants to share their experiences, I'd be happy to hear them. Maybe we can support each other. And if someone reading this is in a similar situation, I just want to say, take care of yourself. Don't let guilt or the illusions of love trap you for too long. It hurts to lose someone you loved, but it hurts even more to stay in a relationship where trust and respect are gone. When I finally discovered the truth, my path was clear: leave. And that's what I did. I hope no one else has to go through the same thing, but if you do, I hope you find the strength to do what you need to protect yourself. I've learned from this experience that my instincts were right. Something was wrong, and I should have listened sooner. I've also learned that communication is vital. Working 16 hours a day and expecting your partner to wait forever isn't sustainable. Not that it justifies cheating, but it shows how vulnerable relationships can be if you don't nurture them. In the end, that's my biggest takeaway. To always strive for balance in life, to communicate openly with a partner, and to never underestimate the importance of closeness and involvement in a relationship. And if you feel lonely or neglected, it's absolutely better to address the problem directly or end the relationship honestly rather than breaking someone else's heart with lies and betrayal. Now I'm here, and I'm looking forward to a future where I can be a better version of myself without these heavy chains of doubt, anger, and mistrust that I carried during those long months of uncertainty. I hope Madison finds a way to make peace with herself someday, but she's not my responsibility anymore. My responsibility is to take care of myself and ensure I don't sink into that darkness again. I'm not cured in some magical way, but I feel lighter, as if I've finally put down a heavy backpack I've been carrying for far too long. I'll keep working on myself, both personally and professionally, but without letting work consume me again. Thank you for reading and allowing me to share my story. I know it's long, but it feels good to write it all down. If anyone wants to comment or ask anything, I'll respond when I can. This was my story, and it's far from a happy one, but maybe it can help someone else who's going through something similar. You're not alone, and there is life after betrayal. I promise. I'm already starting to feel the freedom and relief of no longer living in a lie. I wish you all the best in your own lives and relationships. Take care of yourselves and each other. And promise me, if you see clear warning signs in a relationship, confront them. Find out the truth, no matter how painful it is. It's better to know than to live in a false sense of security. That's my biggest lesson from all of this, and it's one I'll never forget.
If you liked this story, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It helps a lot, and you won't miss out on any future stories. Take care and live your best life.